Hello and welcome back to the Rekt Capital channel. Welcome to today's update. Bitcoin has been doing pretty well ever since it's rebounded from the 200 weekly exponential moving average, an important investor sentiment gauge for long-term investors. So we've seen a rebound from here, and in fact something that's very positive for Bitcoin's price action at the moment is that it's breached a very strong support turned resistance, but it hasn't really been a strong resistance in the past, only a strong support. We remember this time where Bitcoin was consolidating above 6,000 for many months at a time, but we can see that as a resistance, this isn't really a strong resistance, but this is the resistance nonetheless that we have to watch as we enter the end of the week. So it is early on in the week, but this is something to watch out for going forward. But so far, so good. In fact, this is a rally that's probably been spurred on the fact that the Fed have announced unlimited quantitative easing. So essentially speaking, they're going to be printing money as long as they have to just rescue the markets. And pretty much on this news, Bitcoin has been performing quite well. Generally speaking, mentions of a recession have been on the decline over the past few days, but they have only recently picked up, and we can see that actually Bitcoin's price is following in that trend as well. But recession mentions have increased towards the upside because there was talk of that unlimited quantitative easing, which could be positive news for Bitcoin because Bitcoin is increasing towards the upside. Because if we see hyperinflation in the dollar, this could actually be an opening for plan B to occur. Of course, this is what many people, many crypto enthusiasts are hoping for, but at the moment we are seeing a positive sign in this correlation, because usually we can see whenever fears of a recession go towards the upside and mentions of a recession go to the upside, Bitcoin's price declines. But at the moment we're actually seeing a different trend, which is very interesting. Is this the beginning of the coupling between fears of a recession tying in with Bitcoin's downward price action? At the moment this is just a blip on the radar of this relationship, but let's keep watching it over the next few days. But now that Bitcoin's price has increased towards the upside, so has the hash rate, which is a positive sign. Overall, we were talking about how miners were capitulating here, and this was predominantly smaller mining operations where they just found out that it wasn't really profitable to mine Bitcoin when it was in the 5,000s and below. So this is where smaller miner operations were actually capitulating, but other mining operations were simply turning off their machines, and they just said, you know what, I'm just going to wait for Bitcoin's price action to increase towards the upside, and then we'll turn on our machines again. And of course, a bit of that has been coming into play because now it's profitable for miners to be mining Bitcoin. And this is why we're seeing an increase in the hash rate. So of course, some capitulation here, but there was a strategic element in some mining operations to just wait it out, wait for Bitcoin's price action to increase so that mining is once again profitable for them. And we're seeing an increase in hash rate to just reflect that. But in terms of Bitcoin's price action, this is actually something I was talking about in yesterday's video. Is the Bitcoin bottom in? We are currently in an area of outsized returns for Bitcoin investors. Every time we saw investors invest during these green periods below the 2-year moving average, we've seen exponential uptrends beyond that point. And that's something I spoke about in more detail in yesterday's video. So feel free to check it out. But what I want to focus on in the short term here is that this 2-year moving average is going to be a resistance going forward. So if Bitcoin's price is going to continue rallying on the fact that the Fed has introduced unlimited quantitative easing, unlimited money printing essentially, if this is going to continue being a bullish catalyst for Bitcoin, and it is so far, then I'm just wondering if we're going to test this 2-year moving average as a resistance, and that's where we're going to get that rejection. Because of course, like I mentioned in yesterday's video, the 2-year moving average tends to reject Bitcoin's price whenever Bitcoin actually rallies towards this point. So history is suggesting that this rally could very well end at a maximum point of 7,200. Of course, it could reject a little bit earlier because, of course, we tend to see wedging structures form in these green areas. So that's something we need to bear in mind as well. But in my opinion, this is the maximum that Bitcoin could rally towards, because we tend to see rejection at this 2-year moving average resistance. And even though Bitcoin has been performing quite well recently, we're seeing extreme fear on the fear and greed index. People are very fearful. They're extremely fearful towards Bitcoin's price, which is quite interesting because we've reached 6,700 only just recently. So it's very interesting to see that we're seeing a lot of consolidation in terms of the extremely fearful market sentiment within an area where we tend to see reversals in Bitcoin's price action. So we've seen that reversal in Bitcoin's price action, but the fear and greed index isn't following Bitcoin's price by increasing itself out of the extremely fearful level. And this fear, of course, has been translating into altcoin dominance. Altcoins have been selling off, but this is no surprise. It comes as no surprise if Bitcoin's price has been in an exponential uptrend as of late. So altcoin dominance was going to decline, and in fact we were talking about this last week, because essentially speaking, altcoin dominance has been in an ascending triangle, and it's recently, or at least a few weeks ago, it broke out towards the upside, but this pullback was coming for a while, and it's actually taken many weeks for this pullback to finally reach the top of this ascending triangle. And now we're going to see this test. We're going to see a flip of this previous resistance of the ascending triangle into a new support. So this is something, a technical sign that I'm going to be looking for in the short term, and if we can get that, then this will probably coincide with a Bitcoin sell-off, and altcoins could have some relief rallies themselves. So a support test over here, a support flip over here would increase altcoin dominance towards the upside, and I think that could coincide with a decrease in Bitcoin's price action, but not too sharp of a decrease. If it's going to be a very sharp decrease, then altcoins won't really have that much room to maneuver and do well. But if it's a gradual increase for Bitcoin, then that will be quite positive for altcoins going forward in the short term. Now, despite all of this positive price action in Bitcoin's price, it's very important to mention that the coronavirus hasn't gone away, really. It's not going away anytime soon as well. So Bitcoin is rallying despite the fact that we're still seeing a strong correlation, a strong inverse relationship between the keyword coronavirus and Bitcoin's price action. Bitcoin's price action is in gray and the coronavirus mentions are in green, and we've actually been seeing a decline, decreasing mentions in the coronavirus, even though that this problem has been really persisting, and we're still seeing a lot of exponentiality in the growth curves of new daily confirmed cases in many different countries. So notice how Bitcoin has been rallying during a period of time where coronavirus mentions were actually declining, and over here we actually saw a brief period where corona mentions were increasing and Bitcoin's price actually dipped here. So it's interesting to see how we're still seeing a decrease in coronavirus mentions and Bitcoin's price is actually going towards the upside. So this is quite interesting to me, because coronavirus isn't a resolved issue, not in any sense of the word, in fact, because coronavirus trajectories, if we just compare them to each other, you can see that Hong Kong, Singapore, Japan, South Korea, South Korea has been the best performer in terms of these growth curves, because we've seen a slowing down in the growth rate of new daily coronavirus confirmed cases, but we're actually seeing exponentiality in the United States growth curve. In fact, it's above the 33% daily increase in these new confirmed cases, which is spectacular because Spain is still around that area. Iran has slightly declined from that 33% daily increase rate, as well as Italy, but these are still exponential curves, and the UK here also has an exponential curve. In fact, the Prime Minister Boris Johnson closed down the country. Essentially, they cancelled the country, essentially speaking. The UK got an order to just stay at home because the situation is getting out of control, and this growth rate curve, this exponential growth rate curve, is reflecting that, and that's why people in the UK have to now sit at home. They have to stay at home to limit the spread, and this is essentially the same instruction that the whole world has been getting, really. To limit this growth rate, to limit the spread, people have to stay at home, and coronavirus isn't going away. It still is a very silent and deadly killer. You can see how death rates in Italy, in Spain, have been increasing. Italy has been leading the charge in terms of this because large elderly populations populations have been rising in terms of the death rate. A fair portion of the Italian population is elderly, and this is why we're seeing a very strong increase in the death rates. But of course, Spain is not too far behind. China is slowing down in terms of these death rates, and so is Iran. They're trying to reach logistic curves where we're seeing slowing down in the progress of the death rate, but we can see that the US is actually picking up steam here. So is the UK, and so is France as well. So this is where we need to have that sort of intervention, that we need to stay at home, we need to limit the spread because it is affecting the population, the older population, the most, which is why younger people have to stay at home. Everybody has to stay at home because this will limit the spread and limit the effect it has on other people, particularly the older portion of the population. So the fact that we're seeing an increase in Bitcoin's price action and a decrease in coronavirus mentions is a very curious relationship to me at the moment, because we are seeing that coronavirus isn't yet handled. Things are being put in place, of course, but we're still seeing this issue progress, and we need to continue to monitor that. I'm just wondering why we're seeing a decrease in social media mentions of the coronavirus. Perhaps people have just heard about it too much and they just don't want to hear about it anymore. There is an element of that. I mean, it has been a topic that's been covered non-stop in the media and on social media, so there is an element to that, of course. But in any case, coronavirus is the headline topic. We are living in unprecedented times, and at the moment we're seeing the Fed trying to react to that, and they are risking hyperinflation, which is why Bitcoin is doing quite well in the short term. But we have to monitor the situation and how things are going to progress going forward. And that's about it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching. Please consider dropping a like and of course subscribe for more videos like this in the future. I'm Rekt Capital, and I'll speak to you in the next one. Speak soon.